Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are joining us from today. I am Kyler Cheatham, Global Marketing Director here at Third Stage Consulting Group. And today we are having a very interesting and relevant conversation with our practitioner and business culture expert, Theresa Richardson, about social awareness and company culture. So, first of all, thank you for joining me today, Theresa. Always great to have you.
Absolutely. I'm very excited to be here and talk about the intangibles that really impact the tangible. So, very
Absolutely,
excited.
so important and so relevant kind of in the current climate that we have just around social awareness and current events. So, with that, I'd love to know where everyone is joining us from today. So, if you could just go ahead and put where you're located in the chat. We are live on all social channels, so LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, and then also we can see all of your comments. So, feel free to interject with any questions you might have for Theresa. Or any thoughts that you have regarding the conversation. So, with that, let's jump in. Theresa, I just kind of want to start with a baseline of how important is it for a company leadership team, executive team to just take into consideration current events, whether it's culturally, socioeconomically, all of those types of things, to really understand what the experience is, both personally and professionally, for their workforce?
Sure. So, over the last several years, I think we have been painfully aware of the impact of current events or policies, or even more specifically, global events to how that impacts our work. We always don't have enough time because we're running so quickly to really address these things. But I think within the past few years, we've been placed in a position where it like came to a grinding halt. So we needed to understand the current workspace, right? So we went from in person to virtual, like almost overnight. So how do people interact with that new environment? We went from, seeing people every day to getting emails and being less personable, less interaction, person to person interaction. So understanding how that works is very important, especially, for a company that, it has more relationship type industry needs. So it's very, very important to remember that we're all people. We're still, humans. We still need to interact with each other. And when things change in our environment the way they did, how do we as a company address those issues? So I think it's very, very important to and I've said this 10,000 and maybe two times now, but unless our company is 99.9% automated, we have people that we need to consider when we're changing things or we're making adjustments, or we need to do a 180 on how we conduct business daily. So it's very, very important.
Absolutely. And a lot of people would say, yes, I understand and have an appetite for change management. I understand how that might affect my overall technology implementation or digital transformation project. But many times, especially leaders that become, you know, kind of cold to the personal life of their employees. And I think we've seen a huge shift in just our overall business culture in taking to account things like benefits or remote work or family structure and those types of things. How important are those, we'll call them personal characteristics of an employee to the overall organizational culture?
Well, personally, I think it's hugely important because, prior to this switch,
Mhm.
you had a lot of interaction face to face in meetings, but you also had a lot of things like affinity groups or events or some type of sponsored group dynamic that
Mhm.
people engaged in with each other. And when that gets removed out of your business or your professional work day or work week or whatever, how are you going to address that moving forward? Because it might not be important to a lot of people, but it's still important to the organization. So you can't just shut it off and expect everyone to continue, doing what we're doing and working, with great joy. You need to understand the entire realm of my business environment. Part of that has to do with, yes, I have a job, but we also have those humanistic characteristics that we can't forget about. We if you want people to do their best and be their best, we have to come to them with any type of questions of, how are we doing? Is there something else we can improve on? Do you still want, like, I know some companies do the Friday virtual coffee chats or what, those are
Mhm.
still kind of cool to have, as part of your work week. We're not robots. We are people, and we enjoy social interaction. And in order for us to do our best, we have to be at our best. So how can we be at our best in the new environment? And if you don't
Absolutely.
understand that, you need to put your finger on the pulse and figure it out. And
Yeah.
give us a call. We'll help you out.
Yeah, some emotional intelligence skills
Yeah,
are
very.
certainly crucial for that. Yeah, it's funny you should mention that. Here at Third Stage, we do have a hybrid working environment. We do have an in-person office that we
Mhm.
haven't been to in about 2 years, which is pretty typical for a lot of different workplace experiences. But I've noticed just on like an insecurity side, I'm like awkward now in the office with other people because I don't know, like I forget how like the office banter and the joking used to work. So it
Yeah,
definitely has an effect on you, even if you are an extrovert like myself that really thrives in those environments. And so I think that's so important to consider.
absolutely.
So let's talk about some specific current events here, and I'll just precurse this with we don't have any political affiliations or cultural affiliations here at Third Stage. We're just here to talk about how technology can help better our overall business climate. So when we touch on these, there's no opinions there. It's just a certain understanding of how, as a leadership team, and as a technology project team, how do you make sure you identify and are aware of these overall experiences for the employees? So something that's near and dear to my heart specifically is just the childcare. We being a remote employee and not having a lot of access to childcare, or having schools that are remote learning or those types of things. So as a business leader, Theresa, how would you suggest working through some of those things that are more kind of vulnerable subjects that we typically wouldn't have had 3 years ago, those types of conversations, but now they're necessary to understand how you can create a productive working culture? So what would be some advice you have for managers or leaders that do have some of their employees going through a really challenging time when it comes to their children?
So for me, it's important to always enlist the help of experts. Like, I mean, I don't know how to do everything. That's why I go to an expert. There
Mhm.
are people who have specialized skills that can deal with this. A lot of companies have HR departments, and they have, employee resource programs that you can tap into. I think those are probably the most underutilized areas of uh, an organization. It's there when you need it. It's a nice, some people don't really know exactly
Mhm.
what encompasses in an employee resource group, but they're very helpful. So in terms of leadership, I would tap into the experts. I wouldn't, offer advice or guidance on something that you weren't trained to handle, because even with, let's compare it to change management, right?
Mhm.
So I can understand someone's nonverbal skill or cues to
Mhm.
see which way the conversation's going. Someone who doesn't have the type of training that I have, and they don't recognize those signs, even in tone and inflection, that's a huge indicator to me on which way I should go with the conversation. Do I drop it? Do I push a little harder? Do I move forward? So I would say, if your company is able to have that type of resource, direct your employees there. I would include that information in like a town hall, or I would have, some companies have weekly meetings with departments, or, in certain areas have that information posted. If as a leader, someone comes to you and says, hey, I have an issue, I really want to talk about it, I would just do a little bit of like investigation. What could it possibly be? And if you're not comfortable talking about it, refer them to somebody who's trained to do it. all of the things that are going on right now in the world, yes, you do have to be a leader and be there for your people, but you also have to be a leader and know that I'm not equipped to handle this. So I'm going to support you and direct you to someone who does have the training. Because again, there's a lot of things going on, and dealing with children and dealing with family and dealing with all of these issues. I would like to think everyone has, a certain amount of training or understanding, but not everyone does. And I would rather have that directed to a person who's been trained and has, been through these issues and led groups and conversations so they could really address it the way it needs to be addressed.
That makes a lot of sense, and I think that's a really good piece of advice. I've never personally heard that before of, bringing in HR, experienced or just even more comfortable kind of in that space. A lot of times we get feedback that my HR team isn't authentic. They have this script, this talk track that they're supposed to say when it comes to dealing with, human resourcing issues or any sort of employee feedback. How can HR teams really work to understand the overall climate of their culture and authentically care about what the employees' needs are?
Oh, so that's a great question. And, again, I always refer back to, am I qualified enough to deal with this? Like, I think one of the tellings of a leader is, do I have the ability or the training or the composure to deal with this? As a leader, you are a servant leader. You're there to help your people. You're not there for an ego thing, right? So if I don't have the right expertise, or my HR department doesn't have the right expertise, it's my responsibility as a leader of an organization that oversees hundreds or thousands or even 5 people, right? What can I do to help my team? This is not an I thing. This is a we thing. This is a team, a group.
Mhm.
Business is run by relationships. It's run by people. So if I need to even go outside and get an outside consultant to come in and do the work, that's my responsibility if I want to be a good leader to my people. If I want to be that servant leadership type. So it is not, in my opinion, it's not an ego of, well, I can handle it, I can do that. No, it's, am I equipped to do this properly to serve the people that I have responsibility for? And I think it takes more courage to admit that maybe I don't. So let me go look for it somewhere else, as opposed to try to take on everything and possibly miss an opportunity to help somebody. At the end of the day, we have businesses that are run by and for people. So we can't miss the opportunity to really step up and serve them the way they deserve to be served.
Well said, definitely. And when it comes to making your company more attractive to potential candidates, understanding and being quote unquote woke, if you will, that we talk about a lot, just to things that really matter and motivate the personalities of your workforce. We know right now we're going through this great resignation, great reshuffle, whatever you want to call it. Really, it's the employee that has kind of the power in this situation to choose where they want to go and work. And that's why we've seen a lot of companies invest in, a chief culture officer or something like that that will kind of showcase their overall benefits and value to the employee. So
Mhm.
if you were, say, a chief culture officer right now, what would be a few things that you'd be doing to make sure that you were making your organization as valuable and attractive as possible to potential candidates?
So that's a great question. And I just would like to say that I don't see it as like woke or whatever. I know there's a big push to kind of go down that road, but we also have to understand the needs of every individual, not just
Mhm.
a certain group or a certain category or what have you, because if you go too much to that part, you're going to alienate a lot of other people. So, what is the balance we need to find? I personally would, again, tag my HR team or some type of consultant to understand the real vibe of my company. What am I missing? what are you looking for to stay here? So that is super important to me, because again, you have hundreds of people working for you. You have to make sure that you're listening to the team, the group. It's not just a onesie twosie or whatever. It's how can I make my company more attractive and more inclusive, so people are coming to the job every day feeling good about it. I want to feel good about being here. I don't want to be offended. I want to be valued for my work. And I personally, for me, it's how does my company value me and my opinion? Do they listen to me? Is my contribution valuable? Are they using what I'm recommending? If they're
Mhm.
not, do I get a response? Are people being respectful of one another? And I think there is a line, that we also need to make sure we walk, but we have to make sure everyone is included. Everyone has a voice, if it's survey, if it's, a town hall, if it's an affinity group or what have you. So, I've been doing this for a long time. I've been, 40 hours a week. I've been 60 hours a week. I've been Monday through Friday, Monday through Sunday, 12, 18 hours a day. So my point is, we spend a lot of time at work, right? So we
Mhm.
have to make sure the work environment is inclusive and comfortable for people to spend the majority of their life there, right? And it's not just this group, it's the team, it's everyone. So I would prefer to focus on the everyone, and how can we make everyone feel valued and comfortable and get the best day's work that they're willing to give.
Absolutely. And, just humanizing your overall colleagues. And speaking of humanizing, I can hear your dog barking, and my dogs have like swarmed to my desk and are at like full alert. And that's just, a great manifestation of how working environments truly have transitioned, but people have a life, have dogs, have children, and those things used to be kind of taboo in the professional conversation. But I feel like now we've
Yeah.
really gone into this. I mean, if you were to find a silver lining in a terrible and very, challenging situation, it would be that, you've humanized the people that you work with,
Yes.
really created those, I would say, more lasting relationships, because you kind
Yes.
of have those shared pain points of just, living and working, and just trying to, thrive in where you are. So,
Interestingly enough, I think the next wave of improvement will be, how do I go from virtual to a hybrid model to
mhm,
make everyone again enjoy what they're doing, right? Because personally, I love remote work. I really don't
yeah.
want to go back. Shh. But I'm just saying, like, how can I really capitalize on what we've learned over the past 2 years and really incorporate that into the next phase of what does my work day look like? What does my work environment look
Mhm.
like? You're going to have a lot of people who would love to go back. And then you're going to have a lot of people who just don't want to, because, I can't spend time with my dogs. I can take them out to the park. I can,
Yeah. Mhm.
if I had children, I could see my children at lunchtime. If I do have children, but they're way older, and one
Yeah.
has a daughter. So,
Oh
how
my goodness.
how how can I, get that, continue that connection, or have the benefit of work and home environment to move forward in my career? So I think that's definitely going to be the next wave. Companies are going to have to contend with, and if they get to like, you have to come back, a lot of people might be like, I really enjoy what I do, so yes, I
Yeah.
am going to give you my resignation. I'm going to look for a job that lets me do this. So that's going to be the next interesting wave.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, that speaking of waves, my next question for you that I was super interested in your feedback, is some of the trends kind of mostly in the HR space or in the company culture space that we've seen and talked about on our sister podcast, Transformation Ground Control, which I know you've been on a variety of times, talked about the importance of the very clear line of feedback for
Yes.
employees.
Yes.
And I wondered if you might kind of dig into that and kind of teach us about how we can create that really clear line of, I heard you, I'm listening, thank you for contributing to making our workplace better, that type of thing.
One of my favorite questions, because it's easy to sweep under the rug, and check the box like, oh, yeah, I did the survey, we're good. I think where a lot of people miss the mark on that is not showing the result of that information. So if it's, I need 5 ideas to incorporate in the business, and I get, let's say, 30. I pick 5. Well, you have 25 other people or
Mhm.
responses that need to be addressed. Even if it's a, meeting saying, hey, we had a great turnout. We had 30 responses. We picked the 5. Here they are. Here's the implementation. And then for the rest of the 25, thank you so much. We thought, these were great, and possibly we can, use this group at a later time. So these, we can't do it all, but give an explanation is my point. You can't just drop it and leave it, and then people are like, well, I didn't hear anything back, so why would I participate in the future? So it boils down to, if you're asking me to help you, give me the respect
Mhm.
and consideration of giving me an answer, right? So make sure that information is put out to the organization of the people who participated. Make sure people know that, yep, this was great, but we weren't able to do this because of X, Y, and Z. You can't just leave people hanging with no response and expect them to be engaged and want to participate in the future.
That makes a lot of sense. I also wonder. We had a live stream guest, Dr. Christina Serrano, who is a professor up at Colorado State University,
Okay.
on our ground control. And I thought of you immediately when she was kind of talking about the psychology of digital transformation. Really fascinating subject. Highly recommend you go check out. It's actually on our YouTube channel, Eric's interview with her. But she talked about the need for the individual to be motivated to change. And
Right.
that's not something we talk about a ton. We talk about kind of the holistic view of company culture and team dynamic, but she really talked about if that individual doesn't have that overall what's in it for me or
Yep.
understanding of the change, that
Mhm.
it just simply cannot happen. And I wondered your feedback to that as a change professional.
Well, I completely agree with her, because even when we look at holistic and team, the team is made up of what? Individuals.
People. Yeah.
Individuals. So, you can't have a team without the collective, and the collective is made up of individuals. So, we've discussed this many, many times as well. It's that you need to tap into that what's in it for me to motivate me. And it's not just, well, what's in it for me? It's making me also aware and asking me to participate in the solution. I know I've used this analogy 10,003 times now, or maybe, 4, but it's like me going into your home and moving everything around without asking your permission, without asking your feedback, and then saying, okay, Kyler, you're good. Go ahead. And you're going to look at me like, what are you talking about? You didn't ask me. You didn't ask me what my issues were. You didn't ask me what I wanted, but now you want me to fully function in this environment that you created. You didn't ask me. We're not going to do this. And you're probably going to rearrange everything back to the way you wanted. So work around. But again, it's like you have to be, not just look at the team. Yes, the team is made up of people, but you have to look at them being part of the conversation. You have to give them that respect, understanding, acknowledgement of, yes, we understand, we hear you. What are your ideas? I literally just had this conversation the other day with a young lady, and she said, people are the higher ups. She said they come down here and they make all these changes, and then it doesn't work, and then guess what they do? I said, do they go down to you guys and ask you why it's not working? And she's like, yeah. I'm like, well, it would have made more sense. You'd save on resources, time, investment, if you just asked them, included them in the conversation from the
Mhm.
start.
Yeah, that certainly is really runs rampant in corporate culture. And to me that always made I grew up in corporate culture before, I left and started to do consulting. So for me it's always funny of like thinking about like that executive that came down in like his jeans and cool sneakers and like bought pizza for the team and it doesn't even know like really what team it is because
Yeah.
it's just
Yep.
that that persona, and it goes back to kind of our authenticity. And I highly recommend, if anyone who's on TikTok, if you go find the Gen Zers that make fun of Deloitte and the bigger consulting firms, they're so funny. So if you ever need a good digital transformation laugh, those are great pieces of content. But
Yeah, it really always it boggles my mind, but it amuses me at the fact that people put so much time and effort into looking at a problem from their point of view,
mhm,
as opposed to looking at it from the point of view or getting that point of view from the people who actually do the process. It's again, it's to me, it's an issue possibly of ego. Like, oh, I know how to do this.
oh yeah,
It's on the paper. It says right here, this is how you do it. No, well, time out. Hold on, time out. So, I come from corporate as well, and I used to work for the automotive big three, and
mhm,
the biggest joke would be when some of the engineers would be on their desks and they'd give us a paper and say, go do it. And then I'd have team leads say, okay, let's figure this out how it's really going to work.
yeah.
You sit up there and you draw your paper, and then you don't come down here to ask us on the line. You don't include the team, and then you want us to make it work. So, it's little time, and it'll have a great value after.
Absolutely. And I wonder if those organizations that are so really stuck in that standardized, like the executives make the decision, the middle management is in charge of executing that decision. However, we haven't armed them or coached them through how to have these conversations. When I was
Absolutely.
in the corporate world, I had this manager and she was brilliant. She was so good at her job, highest performer, but a terrible manager sometimes. And that's the thing, is she just didn't know how to
Yeah.
have these types of conversations. And
Mhm.
if she did, she would have been highly effective, but she
Yeah.
put so much time into being like, the really stoic executives, because that's what she wanted to be,
Yeah.
that she forgot how to humanize her team. And I would always sit there and I think, Theresa, you and I are a lot alike in just seeing things for what they are, and in these situations of like, why are you doing that? Why are you acting that way? Like that seems so inefficient to me. Like
Yeah.
if you just actually listen to what your employees were trying to say to you, wouldn't you think that they would work a lot harder for you?
Yeah.
But you know, um, it's just kind of one of those things. I wonder if you think that corporate structure will become kind of unraveled with
Yes.
this labor shortage, um, and just overall employees kind of saying, actually, no, I don't think I'm going to do that anymore. And it's something that we've kind of never experienced on this level and volume.
That's a great topic to discuss because it kind of wraps into the work environment and the way it's changed in terms of logistics, right? We now have a different mindset. It's more, it went from, okay, now I have to figure out how to survive, to I figured it out and I enjoy it. So what do I need to do to keep the improvement going? One thing I can say for my time within the auto industry is that they recognize some of these issues, and they put a lot of us young managers through training. So how to have difficult conversations with people, how to lead without authority, how to do these different humanistic things, as you stated, to make sure the job get done and you respected your people. Again, like I said, I have a lot of training. I can see, I can hear, I can just feel the room. A lot of companies may not have that level of
Mhm.
training, but they should. So again, it's going to be interesting to see the next wave of improvement and how we're going to interact with business, because business is not the same anymore. You don't
Mhm.
have, some companies might want to go back to that, good old structure they had before,
Mhm.
but I can't see them retaining the top talent. I
Yeah.
can't see, the growth and the improvements that you'll get with really super engaged employees who feel valued. So, and again, it's the question of, what does feeling valued mean?
Mhm.
It might be different from an affinity group. It might be, X, Y, and Z, but that's the job of leadership. When I was coming up into my career, a lot of the leadership was that traditional sense of leadership. Now you have servant leadership. That's what
Mhm.
the goal is. Like, I know I've had a lot of people continue to want to work for me. And it's not because, I was a leader. It was because I cared and I listened,
Mhm.
and I was that servant leader, and I wanted to help people move on in their careers. I wasn't the type of leader that was threatened by someone who had better skills than me or knew more. That I would want to like encourage it and help it and nourish it and grow. And a lot of people left me because they got promoted, but that's my job as a leader.
Yeah,
My job isn't
exactly.
to use their skills to make myself shine. If I want to shine, I need to sharpen my skills. My job is to create an environment where people can thrive and feel valued and get the best possible output my team can have. End of story. And that's what I did. So a lot of companies need to understand, if you want the excellence and the improvements and the growth to make sure your company is moving forward, that's what you're going to need.
Absolutely. And let's talk a little bit about the technology side of things. Recently, in one of our ground control episodes, Eric and I talked about this new emergence of nudge technology and talking about how it encourages, from more of a psychological standpoint, uh, end users or those actual frontline employees to engage with new technology. So it's almost like a bridge the gap to, it's not training so much, it could be a gateway to training, but it's just an understanding of how that could optimize their overall experience. So I wondered if you thought that when we talk about trends, that technology will come with sort of this hybrid caveat of hard technical skills, but also either these big business technologists or even platforms that can speak more like a human being, and what that will look like as far as creating successful projects, I'll say.
So yes, the being in that fourth wave of the industrial revolution right now, so we're intertwining people and technology, and it's not just for a certain group anymore. It's really, how do we become more efficient and effective? And it's really coming down to that line, right? That first line person. So I do see a lot of that technology needing to be embraced at that level, and it does need to be more inclusive of that particular area in an organization for it to be effective. So I do see like AI and things like that being more useful and used than not. Prior to, you would look to say, okay, the AI technology or this technology, it's for those engineers only. It's for this group
Mhm.
only. Now it's being spread across the whole organization from front line to the top. So absolutely, you're going to have certain technologies, maybe even take away some of that quote unquote non-value added activity that an employee was doing before, so we can free them up to do more valuable tasks. So
And what would you say? I know we talked about this again with Christina from CSU, to open the door to the workforce of people that might not be hard technical engineer employees, but still having that opportunity in technology, like yourself. Obviously, you're incredibly intelligent and have a great background in business process and all kinds of different technical skills, but you still have that human side, and you might just be a unicorn. I don't know. But
I'm a
um,
unicorn.
I think that there's, especially, we even talked to one of the leaders at Lockheed Martin recently, and they talked about their investing in STEM programs, even starting at sixth grade.
Yeah.
These kids won't come into the workforce for decades, but they still see from their data that it's so important to do that. And I think one thing we want to do here at Third Stage is teach our audience and just inform our community that you can absolutely be in the technology industry and not be incredibly strong in coding or engineering or those types of things. So I'm just curious as to what you would say for someone that might be considering a career that might not have those skills.
So again, I think this piggybacks nicely off of the beginning of our conversation on how industry has changed. And it's not just our physical environment, it's everything. So, years ago you could either be a lawyer or you could be a doctor or an engineer. You had very boxed type of careers, right? And you wouldn't traditionally think that a lawyer needs technology, or, a writer needs tech, or whatever. Now we're moving to become more hybrid, where you will see in the future everyone is going to need technology. So them going back to the sixth grade or even sooner is it's where our future will be, right?
Mhm.
We have to get to a point where we are introducing these topics or these opportunities to everyone if we want to remain competitive. So if
Mhm.
you look at the world, the global scale, it would blow your mind to see when this actually starts, or who's using this technology in their businesses. And maybe we are behind and we need to catch up, but we also need to make sure that whatever it is we offer, there is a level of comfort and inclusivity in it. I think a lot of reasons people don't get into this is the fear factor.
Mhm.
I don't know this, or it's too hard for me, or X, Y, and Z. So us overcoming that objection and that fear helps to open the doors to more efficiencies, to more opportunities. Again, we have to walk away from this non-value added activity so we can optimize our employees, develop their skills, and become more competitive, not just in our industry, but on a global scale.
I love that you attach that to a competitive advantage. I completely agree in the fact that there is a lot of room for creatives in the technology sphere. And many times that makes whatever technology they're implementing that much easier because that human side was considered within the project plan.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, unless your, business is 99.9%
Yeah.
automated, people are included in your work structure, your organizational structure. That's just the way it is. So, if we are introducing a technology or an opportunity, and we evaluate our work stream and say, okay, we're at, 80% efficiency, we have 20% non-value added work. Can you imagine the impact our teams or our product or our business would have if we were able to reduce that 20% to 10, and then make our, have more value added activities and make our employees feel more, useful and energetic about their jobs, and just be like, hey, I have an idea. Like, the moment you have silence is the moment you need to worry. Seriously. If I give you 10,000 crazy ideas, at least I'm willing to give you 10,000 crazy ideas. Five might work, whatever, but at least you have them. And if I get to the point where, I'm just not going to give you any more of my ideas, you have a problem. So how can we expand on creating this value added, environment for our employees to thrive and to produce and to be happy and just to become the best versions of what they want to be in our company?
That's well said. That complacency, that really can be the toxic trait
It
of
is.
what will take you down as an organization. And silence is deadly. As a mom of two toddlers, when it's silent, there is something
Yeah,
critically wrong.
yeah.
And our
And honestly, that's where you get this great resignation, right?
Mhm.
You have people who are feeling, hey, you don't want to listen to me. You don't want to capitalize on my ideas. I'm trying to help. You don't want to help. Okay, I'm going to go somewhere else who will, and I'm going to probably find a better job with better pay and a better environment, et cetera, et cetera. And then what did you lose? You lost experience. You lost part of the team, which, even if, like, let's just say me in an organization, if I left, that is part of the team that you just lost.
Mhm.
So how are you going to backfill that? You got to interview, you got to stress other employees out, you got to spend time and money on, training. There's a lot of intangibles when that happens. But it has a real world impact to your ROI, to your team environment, to your business as a whole. So, you need to have that servant leadership mindset to really look at everything that's going on. It's not just, okay, I'm not going to listen to Theresa's ideas because I'm busy. It's like, okay, well, now she's gone. Now she's, not part of that team. Now I have to overburden the other people. Now, so there's a lot of factors that go on in those decisions that a true leader will consider before making some of those choices.
Absolutely. And something I know you talk about a lot that you touched on there was just overall purpose. And it
Yes.
seems as though that is really the thesis to, lowering attrition, to making sure your employees do feel content and satisfied within their workspace, but also within a digital transformation project. If nobody understands why they're doing that,
Yep.
then it's certainly not a huge motivator to, really push to be successful.
Absolutely. And honestly, when you look at what we're talking about and what we're proposing, it boils down to being a decent human being.
Hmm.
Like, business aside, it'll be there tomorrow. Like, people are involved in what we're doing. I'm not going to go to a job and spend time away from my husband and my family to spend time away from my husband and my family. I'm there for a reason, and I need to find purpose, and I need to make sure that I feel valued, because if I'm not feeling valued and my ideas are important, I'm not part of the solution, what am I here for? Like, what am I
Hmm.
doing? So that those things need to be considered when you're looking at a digital transformation. You want to make sure that it's not only the nuts and bolts, but it's the other pieces of inclusivity, and do people understand, and what are their questions, and et cetera, that you need to contend with. Otherwise, you know what? Your adoption and user rates probably
Yeah.
won't be that high. You'll have a technology that has a pretty bow on it that just spent
Yeah.
$500 million. That's just, it's there. So what's the point?
Yeah, it's completely irrelevant if it's not getting used. It's, that technical debt that we talk a lot about
Yeah.
because that plan and understanding the overall end game, if you will, um, of what that's actually going to look like for the user and that experience. And in our last few minutes here, Teresa, I want to ask you a difficult question. When it
Uh-oh.
comes to, I know, but I know you're up for the challenge.
Okay.
Within the world right now, no matter where you're located, obviously we have a global audience. We have a global client community here at Third Stage. So we are very good at kind of chameleon into different organizations and understanding what our role there is. Since we are in just such a social divisive time, it's a really difficult time to be a leader within an organization where you might have different political ideations, you might have different cultural nuances, you might have someone who's really affected by COVID-19 and someone who thinks that it's a hoax, and those different very polarizing views. How, as a business leader, do you respect people's opinions but still try and unite under a term of collective values as a
Mhm.
business outside of all of the different noise just with in our current climate right now?
So, boy, you really laid
I
it
know.
on me, didn't
I
you, sister?
I waited till the end so you wouldn't hang up on me. No.
No, I think it's important. I think that, again, when companies gravitate too far each way, you're going
Mhm,
to miss a side. You're going to miss a side, right? So, if I believe strongly one way, and my coworker strongly believes another way, there has to be something in the middle that we can decide on, right? There has to be some type of accommodation and accountability and explanation behind the decisions I'm making. So
mhm,
if I don't look at the whole picture and saying, okay, Teresa wants this, Kyler wants this, how can we come to the middle to say we can work on this together as a group to satisfy the needs for our clients?
mhm,
Like, we need to take a consideration into the clients as well. What are we selling? What are we producing? What service are we providing? At the end of the day, if an organization doesn't produce a certain X, Y, or Z, no one gets paid. So, how do we collectively hear each other, respect each other's opinions, and come to a consensus where we can move forward? So,
mhm,
I honestly believe having those difficult conversations up front and really listening to everyone and having the dialogue and the conversation is the hard work. Once we get to the point of, okay, we've decided to do this, this is why, these accommodations are for this side, these accommodations are for this side, and this is where in the middle we're going to meet as a team together so we can move forward as an organization. Until we do that, then we're really not going to go anywhere. We're really not. So if the need to have some type of an affinity group or an HR person or somebody comes in, that tells me you're listening to me, Kyler. If I say I don't feel valued and I got this and then you just come to me, well, let's talk about it. Well, are you equipped to talk to me about this, or are you providing me with a resource so I can come to a decision and make a conclusion so we can move forward? There's certain steps that you have to make in order for us to move forward. And if you skip those steps, you're in trouble. So,
Absolutely. And I think you hit on something that's so important, is just that those subculture purpose and values. For
absolutely.
example, where I live right now, we are in this huge turmoil within our public school district. There's the flipping of the board, the leadership has completely changed, and it's a really point of contention for our community. However, when I walk into my son's preschool class,
Mhm.
that all dissolves away, because no matter if that parent agrees with me or agrees with someone else, or we're completely on opposite sides of the road here, we still have a shared purpose of the safety of our
Absolutely.
children. And I think that's something that it scales to what you were saying in the community. We have a shared purpose of getting paid, of being successful, of making change in our industry. And I think that's, the key to that.
Well, let me just say this, like every organization has its culture, it has its systems and
Mhm.
structures, right? And we all want to be part of it and inclusive, but we can't forget we have a competitor next door.
Yeah, very good point.
So if we're fighting internally and this and that, our competitor could snatch up our contract. They
Hmm.
could snatch up our clients. They could snap. So while we're doing all of this and someone takes you know my lunch, I'm not going to eat. So it boils down to, what do we need to do as a collective to move forward
Hmm.
to meet the needs of our clients or our consumers, or whatever, because at the end of the day we are at work to produce or to provide something,
Hmm.
you know
Excellent. Yeah.
so
Yeah, and I think that this, having that purpose around what you provide is kind of, what you're definitely saying here, and just having that just overlay of respect, within not only the leadership hierarchy, but within your peer network group too.
absolutely, because although we are at work and we do need to find a balance and respect each other, at the end of the day we're there to make money and to provide a service.
Hmm.
If we can't do that, our competitors, locally, nationally, even globally, will take our lunch. And then what is the purpose of being in an organization with no business?
Absolutely. All such great insight. I highly recommend, if you haven't checked out Teresa's keynote from our recent Digital Stratosphere event, you can go to digitalstratosphere.2022.com and see that replay. It's also on our YouTube page, which a lot of you are streaming from right now. But Teresa, this is such great advice, and we so appreciate your time and your insight and your vulnerability of just having these conversations to create a better working culture for our client community.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure.
And if you'd like to reach out to Teresa directly, we will put her contact information in the description copy. This episode will also be on our Digital Stratosphere podcast, next week. So please go ahead and subscribe to that wherever you get your podcasts. I do original interviews with our team here at Third Stage every Wednesday. So thank you so much for joining us today, and we will see you next time.
Absolutely.